Times. All right, and I'll just say welcome again. This is the January installment of the National Conservation District Employees Association Professional Development Series. We're starting our second year, so we made it through 2024. All of those recordings are posted to the website, as this one will be as well. So if you have people in your office or you know of other employees who were unable to attend today live, they can go back and watch the recording. My name is Sarah Tunge. I am the vice president for the Employees Association, and I am in the great state of North Dakota, where it is cold and windy today, which seems to be across the country. NCDEA, for those of you who don't know, is a membership organization. We represent more than 7,000 employees across the nation, and we serve our employees through policy actions, through partnership development, and through building resources and support for employees to advance themselves professionally. So one of the things that we do is host and promote professional development opportunities for employees. We have partnership with Convene LLC that to host a monthly webinar. Those are soft skills webinars, so really focused on leadership, dealing with people, interpersonal relationships, things like that. And then this one that we host on the fourth Wednesday of every month is kind of a wide variety of topics, really driven by you as employees. We're working on developing our 2025 survey for topics, so that will be coming out to everyone. So please fill it in if there's something that you're just dying to learn about, to hear more about. Registration for these is always on our website, ncdea.us, and the recordings will be posted there as well. I try and get them up the same week, but sometimes life happens and it may be a few days late, but they're up there. They will get up there. So just before we get started, I would also invite you, if any of you are attending the National Association of Conservation Districts annual meeting in Salt Lake City this year. NCDEA is hosting an employee development workshop on Saturday, February 8th. It'll be from 1 until 5. Our theme this year, tying into NACDs, is Be the Change, setting projects up for success and changing mindsets towards growth. We have an excellent panel of district employees from across the region, Utah, New Mexico, Wyoming, and then we also have some partners who are going to visit with us about how they've developed projects, services, grown their districts, and really kind of gotten their boards and their stakeholders to go along with them on those things. So if you can make it, fantastic. We'd love to see you there if you're planning on attending. So today we are talking about education programs, building them up, supporting them. How do you do a successful education program? We have a couple of very interesting perspectives today. We have Alina Crone-Hedman. She is with the Minnehaha Conservation District in South Dakota. And then we have Taylor and Sensa, who are with the Mancos Conservation District in Colorado. So we've kind of, Minnehaha is more urban, I would say, in Sioux Falls, and Mancos is probably a little bit more rural compared to that. So two very interesting perspectives. So we're going to start off, and if you guys want to share your screen. For those of you who are listening in, you cannot comment, but there is a question answer box. So if you have questions as the presenters are going through their presentation, please type it in there. We will get those answered. There'll be a little bit of time after each presentation, and then at the end, we'll have time to visit. So please enter those into that box. So, and Alina, I will let you take over.
All right, I'm just pulling up my presentation here, so give me 1 second. Trying to put it into presentation mode. See if it'll go. Has it switched over for you guys? Perfect. All right, sorry about that.
Yep, looks good.
Okay. Fantastic. All right. So yes, my name is Lena Crown-Hedman. I work with the Minnehaha Conservation District as the Urban Conservation Education Coordinator. So a lot of what I do here is looking to work with like the city or various other entities to do some urban conservation work surrounding pollinators, urban agriculture, and various other things. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about how I've gone about developing some of our outreach programs in Minnehaha County. I think that the biggest thing to take note of when you're developing a program is that a program will fail if there is no passion for it. And I mean this like with all of my heart, because basically the biggest thing that I've found that makes the program successful or not successful in any work I do or with any groups that we work with is how much passion everyone involved has for the project. And so a big thing is not just inspiring passion in others, but really recognizing like what you're passionate for and making sure that you're demonstrating that passion in the work that you're doing. And so I recommend whenever you're developing a program or doing anything, you try to make sure that your passions are what are guiding that program and infusing some aspect of your passion into it to make sure that you're willing to commit as hard as you need to make sure that the program will go through successfully. So we have a variety of projects and programs that we do here within the county. I've picked a few to discuss, but there are several others too. The biggest one that we execute is our Urban Conservation Demonstration Awareness Project. And so that was started back in 2020 when I came in for my position. My actual position is part of that project, but basically some other programs that are established through that are we have our SQUARE, which is our Space for Quality Urban Agricultural Resource Education, which is a really nice long title for our community garden space and education area. And then we also have a community rain garden that we're working to establish with a park area that I'll go into a little bit more on. And then we have our prairie and pollinator garden program. And this one is like the one I think of all the programs, if I really had to say that I'm most excited about, this is my one because I mean, I worked several years to try to get this established within Sioux Falls. And then now, as of, I want to say a couple weeks ago, we have 2 or 3 cities that are looking to expand and do more with this. So I'll go into that a little bit further when I get to that slide to kind of discuss how our kits work and some of the programs that we do within that. Conservation crafts is another one that I've worked on. I actually have an art education background going into my position originally. And so when I'm talking about those passions, I always try to infuse art in some aspect when I can, because I feel like that's one of the areas that a lot of people don't necessarily think of in regards to providing conservation work to people. But as having an education background, you know that having multiple ways that people can learn information is always a good way for that to stick and to maybe inspire others. And then I'm going to also talk about our Sioux Empire Water Festival that we put on that has been going on for several decades. So the Urban Conservation Demonstration Awareness Project was started because there was a need within the county to try to do more work regarding urban conservation. And my board and my manager saw that and wanted to see what could be done. They weren't really sure where it was going. They figured, let's hire our urban conservation education coordinator, me, and then see kind of what we want to do moving from there. So when we went and we were kind of looking about at the situation, one of the things we wanted to do was address all of our urban conservation needs that we thought we could address within this position. A major component of that was developing community conservation demonstration sites. And so that's where our community garden came into play. And that's where some of the work I'm doing with the rain gardens is coming into play. When you go to Sioux Falls, it is an amazing city, but there is a lack of demonstration areas for people to kind of come and learn some of these practices unless you know of an active producer that is using some of these practices, or if you know of a property that may have done it on their own. And we wanted to make sure that we were starting to put the stuff in the public eye to get people curious about it. And so with our community garden space, the way that we kind of formatted it is we worked with the city to get 5 acres, and then we have an option to get an additional 5 acres for that. It's on an area that's considered floodplain that they're not able to use for a lot of other things. And so we were able to get contracted for it, and they gave it to us as land to work on in perpetuity as long as we have our project going there. So there we kind of set up what we thought might be some of the cool items that we could get for a demonstration. So we do have a high tunnel out there. We've done raised beds. We have a forest being planted well, not as we speak, but we're working on getting that going in the spring because last year we did have some flooding that set us back on that aspect. But we're going to be planting a lot of different fruit trees and shrubs and various other things that we as a district get questions about and people are curious curious about what can you grow here. And so the way that we've kind of formatted that space is we want it to be an area that we establish for education, but then also we'll have a component where people will be able to come and do a community garden there as well. And so we're doing some of that hands-on education stuff there. For this project, I think it's important to note that we had been working on it since 2020, and we're finally going to have it established to a point where we'll be able to have community input now in 2025. The biggest holdup with that was trying to get the land. And when we were even talking with the city, it took me 2 years to get a contract drafted for that. And I think that that's important when you're thinking about developing some of these programs, is making sure you don't lose focus on your end game. And that's kind of why I'm talking about that passion, because I really wanted this community garden to go. And so it took a lot of years and a lot of conversations and checking back with people in order to get this going. And so that's something to kind of keep in mind if you're looking at doing a larger scale project like this, is kind of thinking about, okay, what do we want in 3 years? What do we want in 5 years? What do we want in 10 years as we're developing some of this stuff? And then figuring out who are the critical partners within that we need to try to get on our side so that we can move forward with this. In regards to the rain garden that we're developing, so that actually started because I've been doing a lot of work with the city. I'm kind of consulting with them a little bit because they did have a sustainability coordinator here that left to pursue some other items. And so they kind of checked in with us to see, what would you be interested in trying to help the city with? And obviously we said that, to check in with us about anything. And we had a community group that really wanted to establish some pollinator habitat within their park. And when we were looking at that, a good area of the park is by a wetland, and there's a few significant runoff areas. So that's why a rain garden got started there. That would be the initial project that we would do, because there are some other areas where they want to do some additional pollinator habitat management. But we thought if we could demonstrate that the community would be able to help us in managing this rain garden, that would be proof of concept to the city to allow them to add an additional habitat, because it would be somewhat easier to manage that. And so I'm just trying to kind of give you as much information as I can on some of these projects, just to kind of get your thoughts flowing about what are some things to consider that maybe you haven't if you're looking at doing some of these projects. So then our Prairie and Pollinator Garden program, this one was established in 2023, but we had been working on it for a full year to get the kits developed. So this one was something I had wanted to do since day one when I got in here, because we have a beautiful prairie that surrounds Sioux Falls. But as far as in the city, there's a lot of areas where I felt there could be some additional pollinator habitat developed. And so in talking with the city and being part of several other events and being on a kind of panel that discussed some sustainability concerns within Sioux Falls, it got established that there were some other entities that were very interested in trying to get this pollinator program going. It was just someone needed to kind of pick it up and push it. And so I worked with the sustainability coordinator while they were there at the time, because it was a passion project of theirs, to start looking and seeing how could we make pollinator planting accessible. And so through some of the work they did in regards to surveying the public and some general discussions that we had when we were doing some of the other sustainability planning work, we kind of determined that the biggest hurdles that were going to fall into place when we were trying to get this program going were cost and education, were the two things. And so that's why education was such an extreme part of putting together these kits. When you get a kit, basically what we did is we developed a booklet that goes in and it talks about the full process of how to plant it. And we talked with various entities based off of their knowledge of how to go about planting, from people who have never done any kind of grass seeding period to people that were pretty well versed, were part of the master gardeners, to just make sure that it was a pretty conclusive booklet. And that's why it's so important to have community partners and various other entities you can reach out to when you're trying to establish some of these programs. I cannot tell you how much their support helped in developing this. But we looked at some other programs that were in various places. We established that we would want to have some kind of a garden sign that would be available for people, because one of the other hurdles was making sure neighbors were aware what you were doing was intentional. And then the seed packet was one of the biggest hurdles, because when you work with a city entity, a lot of times there's zoning restrictions that you have to work with. And that was one of the things that we had to establish with them. There was some rules regarding the height of vegetation. And as you know, if you develop any kind of mix for native plants, there is a rough height that they might be, but they might be a little bit higher. And so we had to make sure they were okay if it didn't quite meet their 18-inch restriction. If they have, some of them grew, as long as it was done in a thoughtful manner. And we were able to get through some of those zoning hurdles with the city by establishing a mix that was 100% South Dakota native seed. And we made sure that it was some of the shorter grasses and various plants that might grow within it, just to make sure that we were being thoughtful and cognizant of some of those restrictions. But yeah, so basically what we do is we develop these kits. I worked with the city to do the design, because the thing is, when you're working with a larger municipality, you have to make sure everything is compliant with their standards. And then once we had the packet developed with all of the information, how to kill your grass, to put the seed in, what are some suggestions regarding how and why to do some of the processes that you do, getting the signs made up and doing the seeds. We now have the kits available, and we sell them through our district. And we've had several other cities within the state that are working on creating similar programs based off of our kit, or selling basically our kit, but just modifying it slightly to fit maybe more of their needs within their city. We plant about 100 square foot area, because that was one of the spots that a lot of people were saying they really just wanted to start with a small patch. And then we have additional seed packets that people can get from us if they want to do a larger area at their home. Conservation crafts. So I'm a huge proponent of thinking about different ways that you can access different populations. And so me, like I'd mentioned, having an art background, came up with conservation crafts because I was thinking about what would be something I would like to have available for me if I was wanting to learn about a concept. And I had developed a partnership with a local store that sells various crafts and different things for local producers. And so I went to them and was just like, hey, could we maybe, if I develop this program, sell them here? They agreed. We don't have to pay them any kind of additional cost, but that was factored in if necessary. So that's something to consider if a store is holding it. Sometimes they will waive the cost because you're a nonprofit. Sometimes you'll have to give them a certain percentage cut of what you're selling. And basically what it was I came up with thoughts and ideas regarding conservation and sustainability, and tried to come up with a craft that had something to do with that concept. It comes with a pamphlet that sort of states what the project is, and then has a bunch of information regarding the concept of what I was trying to do. The one that's an example picture is around Earth Day. There was a lot of stuff regarding, the 3 R's and sustainability. And so we talked a little bit about what recycling and reusing and various things like that look like within there. We kind of tried to garner it toward, maybe like fifth graders, sixth graders, something like that. But there are ways that you can obviously modify it for your audience. And that's something to consider too when you're developing your programs, is what kind of an audience are you looking for? I noticed that there was kind of a gap around that age. So that's why I wanted to develop this program to have it available. And the nice thing is too, it is also an income generating program. And I know some districts, that's kind of the make or break for a few of their programs, unfortunately, is how can we do something that we can devote time to, but that might also be maybe somewhat income generating coming back, so that we can kind of justify some of the time that we're spending. And so that's something to consider as well. And then the Sioux Empire Water Festival. And I know that I'm going through quite a lot of programs here. So if I need to go back when people are asking questions, just let me know and I can get into some more details regarding it. I'm just trying to give you a very base level of what some of these programs look like, so you can see some ideas that you might be interested in. But our Sioux Empire Water Festival has been going on since 1993. The running joke is it's older than I am, because it is. And it's a 2-day event that we currently run in March for youth. We have it as fourth graders, and we invite out students and stuff, and we regularly implement new components to increase like educational opportunities that are available there. I use it as a testing ground sometimes if there's some water resource education or various things that I'm trying to do as a way to just kind of see how well received it is. What are some kinks I might need to work out? What are some ways that maybe I can change it to make it more effective? And it's really nice because we do have regular classroom presentations that people go to that are about 20 minutes in length. But then we also have the exhibit hall where people can come and check out. We have Enviroscapes, various other things there that people can look at. And the students can run around and talk to some of our local partners that are tabling there and do whatever projects or hear about whatever water related concept that they're interested in there. We also have our NRCS support that is amazing during the water festival, and we're able to get some things through them to use, like a worm tunnel and various other aspects of that to develop that. And I know that this has been going on for several decades. So me coming in about 5 years ago, I wasn't there for like the inception of it. But the thing is once you have a program going, it's still important to think about how do we keep it going? How do we make it better? Because it's really easy to kind of get stuck in that rut of, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. But the thing is, if it isn't broke, why not try something small or a small modification here and there just to see if it's better, to make sure that also it's not just the same thing year after year, that you are growing and considering new concepts, new education principles, various things like that. And just to like make sure before I say anything, like there's a significant support is required to keep this event going. We have to have a lot of stakeholder support. We have to regularly talk with them. Some of the ways that we keep the stakeholders interested in it is we do have the kids fill out thank you cards while they're there, and we send them off to all of our sponsors. We make sure that while they're there, we're making the sponsors be known to the teachers in case they want to do anything else. As far as our partners go, we have an ongoing list, and we try to keep up as much as we can with them. And so, yeah, it's quite an undertaking, but it's not an insurmountable undertaking. And depending on if something like this was what you wanted to do, it doesn't have to start out as a large 2-day event. The first one they had, I think, was a half day back in 1993. So that's something to consider. And then just some considerations I really think that are important when you're designing a program that I want to go over based off of the way that I kind of approach it is what's the problem that you're trying to solve. I really feel like the best education programs come from trying to address an issue. And so some of the issues that like I'm currently working on with some additional programs that we're developing is a need for better soil erosion control. I don't know anywhere that doesn't need better soil erosion control. And so that's your problem. And then it's kind of like, okay, next you're going to look at who's my audience that I'm trying to reach. Is there a specific section of your county that you're working with, or how are you wanting to go about that? And then from there, it's kind of like, okay, so what would interest those people? And then you just kind of trickle down. But the biggest thing is like, what is the problem I want to address? Instead of just being like, I want to do urban conservation work, or I really want to do conservation programming. It's like, come up with a specific problem, because you're going to see a lot more efforts that you can kind of put towards that. It'll help you figure out who you need to contact, who are your significant stakeholders. And then like another one I had as an example is just like a lack of enrollment in natural resources careers within our state. Something that's I've realized within the 5 years that I've been working here is how much I didn't know about what was available for natural resources careers, and I'm in one. And so that obviously means that there's probably other people sitting there, students that don't even realize they can go into natural resources careers. And so that's kind of my personal problem that I'm working on right now, trying to develop some kind of an outreach program to youth in schools to learn about some of the natural resources careers that are available. I'm fortunate with the fact that we are in a city, because I have a lot of programs and projects that are already established that I can try to work into to have my program or project start. But when you're in a more rural area, the nice thing is too, is you tend to know everyone. I'm originally from a pretty small town in northern Wisconsin. And so having those relationships does help also when you're trying to break into a school or work with youth to try to do something. So that's something to consider. The size of the problem is something that should directly correlate to the size of the program. If it's just a small kind of niche thing that you're trying to make people aware of, you might want to do like a single program or project. Maybe it'll be something smaller, seeing if there's an event happening in your area that you could have a table at, or and then have like a project developed for that, a small craft or something like that that's educating people on the issue. If it's a larger issue like soil erosion, I mean, that's one of the biggest issues that you can face, then you're looking at maybe a multi-program where it's like, okay, as I'm sitting here thinking of my problem, I realize there's three key areas I really want to work on trying to combat. And so because of those three key areas, now I know that I have two audiences. So I'm going to have a couple different programs to reach those two different sectors of the community. And then consider specifying your problem even further for clarity of vision. So setting some of your goals, you know, I'm looking to address soil erosion control. So how on earth am I going to address soil erosion control, and how am I going to be able to properly understand that? And these are important things where when you're looking at funding for your programs, you need to make sure you know from the get-go, what are your goals? Because I find that the programs that I'm able to get additional grant funds or different things for are the ones that from the beginning, I had a clear thought in mind of like, this is when I'm going to say I was successful when this program is done. Like, this is the goal that I need to hit. And so that's something that should really be, at the forefront of your thought from the beginning. Some thoughts are just to be honest with yourself, your time commitment available. I know a lot of districts in our state are part-time employees. And so I'm talking about some of these projects. I'm a full-time employee, so I have more time that I can devote to trying to get some of these going. And so you're going to want to consider time for not just implementing, but also how much it's going to take to plan some of these projects out. And so, you might not be able to do the big program today. You might have to start with a smaller one and then see where that goes and start developing a program and maybe get more funding and get some additional input and your knowledge. I think it's really important to make sure you go in with as much knowledge as humanly possible. So recognize what you know, recognize what you don't. Make sure you're educating yourself before going in. There are lots of things that I don't know about as an urban conservation worker, and I'm the first one to tell you that. And I think the worst thing is when people kind of are like, well, I'm going to do a program on it and learn as I'm going, because you're just going to end up creating a lot more work for yourself and trying to develop that. It's better to just start reading and maybe trying to take a month or so to learn really well about a project before you go in and try to execute it. And then just understand like what your expected costs are and if it's actually something you think you can implement. And if not, where are you going to try to find those funds and resources? So that kind of goes into the gaining support aspect. When you're developing partnerships, the biggest thing I can say for any group of people, I don't care where you live, is people help people who help people. I have developed partnerships with people simply by supporting a store. That's how I started the store with the conservation craft kits. I just would shop there all the time, shopping local. With some of our other partners, I happened to meet them at other events that were kind of for conservation loosely. I've had people that I've established partnerships with just from having conversations at Pheasant Fest. I developed one with someone from the Audubon Society just by talking to them at a breakfast. And so, when you're developing partnerships, sometimes some of those organic meetings can help too. And then the biggest thing is obviously when you're having more partners, it means a larger pool of people for your programs. And I think it's really good to establish a pool of partners before you head into certain programs, because you want your people that you can call up and be like, hey, I'm establishing an event and I really want to have at least 3 people here. Would you be one of my people tabling or presenting at this? And knowing that there's a decent chance that they're going to say yes, because obviously it's hard when you put all of this effort in, create this amazing event, and you don't have the people there to support it. Considering community interests when you're trying to get support. Think about how some of the current issues that are going on in your area that maybe aren't 100% exactly connected to what you're doing, but they are connected to what you're doing, can tie into your project. Because once the community wants it, it's much harder for people to say no to wanting it to get done. And then keep your eyes open for unique local events or opportunities. We have brewery events that are loosely based on pollinators. One's called Queen Bee Day. It's mostly about a beer called Queen Bee, but they do have other stuff going on. And then people who like pollinators come there. And I cannot tell you how many people I have had check in and get kits after that within Sioux Falls that I never would have had in front of me interested in trying to plant something in their yard, just because I went to an event that maybe wasn't our typical thought process. And then understanding your board priorities. So I know for a lot of districts, it's really difficult sometimes to get your board on the same level as what your vision is and maybe try to get some of that support. And so one of the ways that I always think about it when I'm going and talking to my board to get support on top of, making sure it's like I already have some of our partners interested in this, get some of that support going. Here's a reason why in the community I think this is important. I go and I'm like, and then looking at our annual and long-term plans, this fits in directly with this goal or this concept. And when we're developing those plans, if I do have something down the docket that I want to do, I make sure I bring that up as a consideration. And so I guess that's just kind of a really basic overview of some of my programs and some thoughts regarding developing those. I do develop quite a lot of programs here, and I help some people do that as well. So um, that's all I kind of have at the moment for you, unless there's further questions.
Thank you, Alina. That was fantastic.
Thanks.
With just a comment for you in your presentation that someone had written about the whole idea, and I completely agree with this, that front loading and planning projects or new programs is fun. The long-term sustainability of those, though, that takes work. And so it's nice to see that, talk a little bit about as you were presenting about how you do that and, adding in some of those, let's try something small, like let's not change the whole works, but let's do something maybe that we want to test out, like you said, or just a small change to see how it goes over to keep those things fresh and keep them moving forward. So I think that's really great advice to people that it gets harder to keep those projects going.
For sure.
Awesome. Let's see. Let's jump into Taylor and Sensa, and then we will, there's a couple questions here, but we'll follow those up at the end.
Perfect. I'll stop sharing right now. There you go.
Perfect. We can see that nicely.
Perfect. Well, hi everyone. We're with the Mancos Conservation District, which if you don't know where we are, we're nestled in the almost furthest southwest corner of Colorado, kind of right outside Mesa Verde. And we are a largely small rural town in Colorado. I'm Taylor Schultz, and I have Sensa Wolcott with me. And just to start. I'm the Education Outreach Coordinator here with the Mancos Conservation District, and this is a largely new role since June of last summer.
And I am Sensa Wolcott, and I am the Watershed Coordinator here at the Mancos Conservation District. I have been here about 3 years now. So we thought we'd start with just a little bit of history of education programs with the Mancos Conservation District. We have always had a strong background and focus on education here at our conservation district. Sorry, we've lost our slide for some reason. There we go. We have historically done a lot of adult education and provided a lot of resources to our community through workshops. We have a master land steward program where small landowners can come and learn about ways to steward their properties. We also have the Montezuma School to Farm project, which was started as a conservation district program. It's a project where the different schools in our community have school gardens, and we provided staff and lessons to help grow vegetables and produce and help kids learn about where their food comes from. That program was so successful that it actually branched off in 2020 and became its own nonprofit organization. And since then, we've had a really huge continued desire for education in our conservation district. We've been working on creating a stream management plan for the Mancos watershed, and throughout all of our stakeholder feedback, there's always the community is always expressing a need for more education. And so we're going to give you a little bit of background in some of the different education programs that we have in our small rural district here. One of the programs that we have is we work with high school chemistry students in Mancos to collect and analyze water quality samples. The district has a program where we collect water quality samples throughout the watershed. And so we work with the school to sample on a monthly basis. And the students get to go outside, they get to get in the river and collect the water quality or collect the water samples. And then we go back into the classroom where they learn how to use actual chemistry skills to titrate and analyze those water quality samples. We usually give them an introductory lesson that includes some background and training on water quality and things like that. But the really cool part about this is that it really helps students see how chemistry is relevant to their real life. They can see, they get to get out in the river, they can see this is the water we use. We use it for drinking water, for showering, we use it for irrigation and watering livestock. And so they can really see how chemistry can be valuable in their real life. This program started when I was a high school science teacher. I did it with my students, and we've continued doing it with the chemistry students here. We've also kind of expanded to work with some other high schools in the area, and we have done some of this work with younger students in the community as well. So this has really been one of those key programs. One of our other major programs is we work with our public library to provide river literacy lessons. We teach about a variety of natural resource topics, all from things such as water quality. We collect macroinvertebrates and get them in the river. We teach about clouds, snow, beavers. We talk a lot about adaptations, the water cycle, and we teach these lessons. They're 1 hour every other Friday to kids that range from 4 to 12. So it's quite a wide age group that can sometimes be a little bit challenging to tailor your lessons to, but it's a great opportunity for them to tie all of these different natural resource topics back to our connection and value of the Mancos River, which runs right outside the library. And so it provides us a great opportunity to get the kids out into the outdoor learning space and provide those lessons to them right there by the river.
I don't know if this is showing up for you guys. It may not. But it just, anyways, sorry. I don't know if it's showing for you, but it is, we do have a kind of curriculum lesson plan that Sensa created, and we do follow, and it follows kind of the engaging ease. So with the students, we engage, we explore, and then we kind of evaluate with the students. And so all of our lessons kind of follow the same kind of rubric, and just kind of getting the same kind of repeatable lesson with students each lesson. And then another one of our really fun programs, which has been great, we do the Colorado Association of Conservation Districts poster contest every year, which is rooted in the NACD poster contest. But we work with the Mancos Elementary art teacher and the Mancos fifth graders to create art posters for the annual poster contest. So every year we go in with the theme and we teach natural resource lessons relating to the topic. We aid the students in finding resources to create posters. They ask us questions about different natural resources. And then students spend several weeks creating posters, which is really fun. We get to go in there while they create posters and they ask us questions relating to the contest. This last year, the theme was May the Forest Be With You Always. So we did a lot of lessons on forest health and kind of watershed health, and just getting them connected to that in a different way. And we work with the art teacher, and she invites us back every year because she really appreciates this contest. And so after the work is completed, then we hang the posters up at our public library, and there's a public voting box. So it gets the community involved too. They get to go through and vote for their favorite posters. And then our conservation district, our board sponsors kind of a cupcake party and an award ceremony at the last day So they get awarded prizes for first, second, and third, and then those winners move on to our state contest, and then if they're chosen, then they move on to the national contest. But they get really excited about it every year. Another one of our big programs is starting to be field trips. So we offer field trips to discuss the district's programming and get students interested in natural resources. MCD has programs in watershed health, soil health, forestry, and then obviously education and outreach. And so our field trips really focus on getting students hands-on science and making those connections from the class world to real world applications. So with older groups of students, like high school, they can get out and go do some forest surveys. With our younger kids, we do anything from just collecting river bugs to getting them outside and making connections about the watershed. We do a lot of watershed connection things with them. And yeah, it's really important to just get them out. This winter will be our first winter that we are offering snow science field trips. And so we really get to get them outside and get kids on some snowshoes when they've never been on snowshoes and talk about science, how it relates to watershed. And we'll have them dig some snow pits and talk about what this level of snow means for our upcoming summers. Just as Sensa said, our river runs right through town. So a lot of these kids have the connections of they have the river. And so how do you relate it to the snow that falls up in the headwaters? And for field trips, these oftentimes we have teachers reach directly out to us and say, I'm teaching my kids about soil health. Can you guys provide a lesson to this many fifth graders? Or sometimes we just reach out to the schools and the school secretaries and say, this is our list of programming we have for the year. Please contact us if there's anything that you would like us to cover with your classrooms. And we kind of tailor each field trip or classroom lesson to what the teacher really wants to teach and include in their curriculum. It's our capacity for education, realizing that not everyone is in the same situation for us, but we've been really lucky. We worked for 2 years with the AmeriCorps Vista program. We had starting in 2022. And then I started as an AmeriCorps Vista in 2023, and I did a year service term before transferring over into this education outreach role, which was really beneficial and really allowed for me to get into the nitty-gritty and know the program from the beginning. And now we have 2 AmeriCorps members through a program called Rural Alliance for Dignity. So it's RAD. And they are really beneficial for teaching all of our lessons and being extra support on our field trips. And they are on the ground teaching and helping us get those lessons out to a ton of students. Our district conservation technicians have also been great. We have 2 in our district, and then we have 1 in our our neighboring conservation district. And they are really beneficial when we have lessons that they're interested in. So they come over and help us teach lessons. They help us do a lot of the break kids up into small groups and interact with them in smaller groups. And then we've also received funding through the NRCS's Education Outreach Grant, which allowed for MCD to have a full-time education outreach coordinator, and a lot of the funding that we have for capacity for doing these field trips, doing these library lessons, getting supplies, and doing these activities for our local organizations.
So along with capacity, which can be challenging, sometimes funding education programs can be challenging as well. And so we thought we'd give you some pointers about how we fund our program. Our outreach programs are heavily funded through grants. We have a variety of grants. As Taylor mentioned, we have that NRCS Education and Outreach Grant, but we've also been able to partner with other organizations to provide some smaller pools of funding for these efforts. So we've partnered with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. The Nature Conservancy has supported some of this work. We work really closely with our Colorado Water Conservation Board and our local water conservation district. We work with Colorado Parks and Wildlife. They have a lot of unique resources and grant funding for education as well. But in addition to grant funding, one of the main ways that we can make these programs possible is through partnerships. Alina also talked about how important partnerships are, but that's one of the things that has been really important for our organization as well.
Yeah, our community partnerships, we haven't really reinvented the wheel. We rely heavily on our neighboring organizations. So we work with High Desert Conservation District, which is our neighboring conservation district. We also work with the Dolores Public Library, the Minkus Public Library. The NRCS has been a great resource. Not only our local office, but our some of the representatives in the Denver office are great at getting us resources if we need them. We have developed some great relationships with our local U.S. Forest Service office and the district ranger, and they're incredibly helpful at either speaking at our education opportunities or providing us resources, as well as the Minkus School District and the Mountain Studies Institute, which is they're located in our neighboring biggest town, and so they have a lot of resources and they're pretty established in getting us the resources and connecting to the schools and connecting with other organizations that we may not already be partnered with.
So some of our lessons learned as we've been developing this education and outreach program, it can be really helpful to tie your lessons into curriculum. Taylor has talked about how important it is to talk to your teachers and work with teachers to have something that is supporting what they're teaching in the classroom. And so you can look at either your state education standards or national education standards and try to tie your lessons into those standards to make them a little bit more applicable if you're looking at working with teachers specifically. One of the other things we've learned is classroom management is vital. Even me coming into teaching, I was like, oh, it's going to be great to come in and teach about natural resources and science. But there's a whole another aspect to that about how do you manage kids? How do you plan lessons that are engaging? How do you manage things like how long it's going to take for kids to cut something out or color something and things like that? And so if you only think about fun teaching and only think about the fun part, you're going to really struggle with teaching because you need that classroom management piece as well. And so making sure that you're taking time to learn about those techniques is also really important. We've really learned to adapt and be flexible. We always try to really over plan so that we don't end up with a lesson that's too short and we don't have anything to do with the kids. But you want to make sure as you're planning out your lessons and your activities that, okay, these are things we can cut if we do run out of time and we'll still get a good lesson. And then something else that we've really learned is don't reinvent the wheel. Taylor's going to talk a little bit about resources, but there's a lot of resources out there and those partnerships can be really valuable. And so sometimes it feels really daunting to think about how am I going to come up with a lesson for this, or how do I do these things? And you don't have to start from scratch. There are a lot of potential ways that you can get ahead of the game and just kind of find things that will work and adapt it to what you're trying to do with your education and outreach program.
Yeah, some of our resources, we rely heavily on kind of just Google and finding things that people have already created for lessons. A great resource is Teacher Pay Teachers. These are already lessons that other teachers have created, and sometimes they're free, sometimes they're very low cost, and you can go in there and get some great handouts or activities and tailor it to the lessons that you want. We are lucky with Colorado Parks and Wildlife. They have a program called Critter Crates, and we can check out kind of these individual lessons relating to the programs that Colorado Parks and Wildlife has. So if we're doing a beaver lesson, we could go to Colorado Parks and Wildlife and check out their beaver critter crate, and it would come with a beaver pellet and have a lesson on kind of beavers and things like that. And so that's one of the examples where we necessarily don't have to buy all the resources, which is really nice. We can just check with our local field office and say, is this available? And then we can teach the lesson, and it really helps us because it means we don't have to buy all the materials for that specific lesson. Another resource is we have the Colorado Association of Environmental Education. And so through that, we have different leadership councils depending on our corner of the state. So we are part of the Southwest Colorado Environmental Education Leadership Council. And it's a lot of environmental educators that partner together to share resources and talk about getting the word out on some upcoming events. And we're really good about leaning on each other for support for upcoming events and upcoming lessons and just kind of resource sharing amongst the leadership council. And then another great one is that we this past year became a snow school through the Winter Wildlands Alliance, and they have a ton of resources for environmental educators and getting kids outdoors and kind of having those snow science curriculum. And so again, they have done a lot of the grunt work to talk about snow science and to talk about snow school. And we just have to adapt it to our local area. And they also provide they provide resources for getting kind of some cost share programs or getting some things that cost like snowshoes. And so they're a great organization if you're looking to get into kind of more of a snow science thing. And yeah, if there's anything that we said today that you would like to learn more outside of the Q&A, feel free to email or call or text either of us. We love to help other people not reinvent the wheel and to love to share resources that we thought have worked or even share what we think hasn't worked with others. And thank you. We really appreciate you guys hearing us talk about our education programs here.
That was great, ladies. Thank you so much. So a couple of questions that have come in throughout the course. So a couple for Alina on the conservation crafts. How do you consider them a revenue generating project, and how do you distribute them or
Yeah.
get them out to folks?
So I mean, so for us, I mean, so the way they started is it can be a revenue generating thing. We do actually end up making more money than what we spend on them. And so the way that I kind of went about it is I just went to my board, explained to them, I think that we could do more passive programming. There's some audiences we're not getting access to. I had worked at an event and I had gotten a stipend. And so I was like, I have this money that I had gotten from this event. And so I'm going to use this money because it's not allocated to anything else. If you're okay with me just trying this one set. And I'm like, I'm going to do a run of like 25 kits and see just how well they go, was the way I kind of went about it. And the way I priced them was I figured out how much it would cost for materials. I was trying to keep it down to no more than maybe like $6 per kit for materials, and then we sell them for $10. Because I also want to make sure that we're being thoughtful of the community and making them affordable. And so yeah, we make $4 per kit. And so for 25, that was like $100. But then as you make more and you can do different ones throughout the year, it doesn't have to be a ton, or you could just have the one. That does add up, and we've made several $100s off of those going through, which sometimes is just enough. If you wanted to do another project, then it'd be like, okay, now this is going to be our project money fund, and what we make off the kits, we're anything that's extra we can do for that. And so that's kind of how we went about developing them and everything. And again, with me having like an art background, I was able to figure out how to price where would be some good areas to try to source some of those materials. And then as far as the printing costs for making those, as part of my position, we do get costs covered for part of the printing through a partnership that we have with the city of Sioux Falls, who's like one of our significant partners through a lot of the projects we do.
Nice. Thank you. Let's see. Let's talk a little bit about, there's some questions about like the community gardens, and I think both districts have some experience in doing some gardening things. So what do you think as you're planning a garden outside of the space? in and of itself, but what are some other aspects that are really important as you get into a project like planning a community garden? Taylor and Sansa, do you want to start? And then Alina, you can chime in with your comments.
Um, I think for our district, a lot of the community garden work happened a little bit before our time, but they rely, I think one of the things to think about is how are you gonna, the labor? And I'm sure you're thinking about those things, but like gardens are a lot of work. And so figuring out creative ways to like, okay, now I've got the space, how are we gonna actually grow these plants and what are we gonna do with them once we have them grown, I think is one of those keys that can be really hard. I saw somebody talk about mentioning FFA. I think working with FFA could be a really great partnership to do. But also our school to farm program and our community gardens really worked closely with those AmeriCorps members because you can get AmeriCorps members for a year-long service term. And so that really helped provide that labor, especially, FFA works great if it's in during the school year. But how do you do that even outside the school year during the summer when kids aren't in session? And so AmeriCorps really helped provide that coverage for the gaps in our program.
Yeah, especially with we kind of closely still follow Montezuma School to Farm, even though they're a different entity now. But yeah, a lot of the things that they've overcome is they teach weekly lessons with the kids and get them engaged during the school year. But yeah, they still have that all summer long labor where they don't really have students involved, and it's a lot of their organization doing the work during the summer. And then they also do some really cool, fun things during the school year. They do like they have kids like pickle and sell stuff and do like a little produce stand. And they do a really good job of getting like kids some life skills of like, hey, make your own food and then like do a little middle school farmers market. And so, yeah, there's a lot of that stuff that we don't really deal with anymore, but there are definitely obstacles for getting community gardens and just, I think the first is having that need and a want, and then having a way to make a connection to the kids in the classroom, and then have resources to manage the garden year round.
Yeah, Alina, you want to add to that?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, as far as resources, agreed, labor, especially even when you're like installing the garden. So we had several NACD grants that we received that has supported our labor costs for when we're doing the first big round of installing a lot of what we do. And now for some of our technical assistance work that we're doing, we do have a field tech that's going to be out there helping with some of that. Getting volunteers, obviously getting a good volunteer pool is always good. So the way that we've kind of gotten about getting our pool started for people to help out at the garden is we've been talking about this for years, really getting them excited every time, we see the new groups, we're explaining what more has happened, making sure we're having pictures, talking to those people, recognizing some of those groups like the master gardeners and various people who might also have access to others. There's another community garden that's actually in Sioux Falls, Iron Fox, and they developed a good relationship with a school to get laborers. And in general, within their community, they went and they did door knocking where their community garden is and just talked with a lot of their community members. And were like, hey, we have this garden. If you want to come and help out at it, we're going to be here during these hours. And anytime you help, you can come take food and you can have it. What we are planning to do with the produce that's developed at our garden is there is a few different areas in Sioux Falls that we can donate it to help support the community. And so there are some other additional partners like Dakota Rural Action, a few other places that have reached out to us and said like, hey, if you need people to pick and then transport to help at some of these places, you can do that too. And so I think the biggest thing is just trying to think of it as fully as possible when you're developing a garden, because yeah, it's great. You think about a garden and it sounds really fun. Even if you're doing your own garden, like I kill a lot of things at my house. Okay. Like, because I'm always thinking I have more time than I do. And I end up being like, no, I screwed up again. So just trying to think about, time management. How many hours a week are we really going to need people out there? Where are we going to have this go? What are we going to do for this? How are we going to cover the costs for maintenance? All these other things, and trying to have as many of those questions answered as possible going into it, I think are the biggest things to think about.
Yeah, that's great. I am also a gardening overachiever in like February and March when it's gray and gross and I'm like, oh, I'm so into it. And then in July, I think to myself, what was I thinking? This is too much. So I'm right there with you. Those are great points. Ladies, thank you for that. Alina, one question was on the age group of the Sioux Empire Water Festival. Do you have a specific age group for it?
Yeah, so we ended up having it be fourth graders. It did start out where it was available generally to schools back when they first started it, and then they ended up trying to focus it based off of where the curriculum kind of matched up within some of the school districts. Because with it being in March, it's towards the end of the fourth grade year, so then they kind of get a taste of some of that curriculum going into their fifth grade year where they're going to be learning more, and so that's why that got settled on. And then even with how we have all of the classes come, we have several thousand of them come throughout the 2 days. And so as time's developed, we've had to break it in where so many groups come for a half a day and then they swap out and then we get a new group for a half a day and go through and have different projects and things that are available to them.
Nice. That's fantastic. Just a couple of other just general comments that folks made as far as reinventing the wheel. I don't think any of us really want to do that. And so talking about like other resources with Project Learning Tree or Project Wild and Project Wet that have some kind of canned curriculum that you can go through. You can go through to do their classes to become a facilitator and get those books and those programs that are fantastic. They're already broken out into age groups, so you can kind of pick and choose for your audiences, which are great. And let's finish up with a promotion question since we're right at 12 o'clock. For both of you, how do you promote the projects and the programs that you're doing? Websites, Facebook, social media, like what does that look like as far as promoting?
Yeah, ours, at least for our youth education, a lot of the promoting for the library program goes through the library, so they're in charge of sending it out. But that's a well set up program because we don't have school here on Fridays, so people really want their kids doing something on Fridays. So the library advertises that for us, and we just kind of show up and teach. And then for the other things for our field trips and lessons, we reach out directly to teachers or schools. And we reach out to either the secretaries and say, can you share with your teachers? Or we reach out to the teachers specifically if we go through the directory or know who they are and say, hey, I have this lesson that I want to teach to fifth graders. And then that's how it's promoted. And then the final way is sometimes we do post things on our Facebook and Instagram. That's we are offering these lessons this year. Please reach out through for us or even through our newsletter that we send out, just being like, hey, if this is something that you want to be involved in, just reach out. So we have a lot of different ways to get the word out.
Thanks. Alina?
As far as promotion goes, it kind of depends on the specific program or project that we're doing. We try to think about like, okay, we want people to see it so many times. So we think about where are they going to be looking at it. So we do actually through our district have like radio ads that we're able to do that get done through very like local sporting events and stuff like that. So sometimes we'll have a little snippet there. Facebook, our website, will advertise in the local paper. Sometimes I'll go around and I'll put up posters at some of the local grocery stores or different things like that. Word of mouth. We talk to a lot of our partners. We always email out our partners if there's an event going on to let them know and be aware of it, see if they'll share it in any of their newsletters or pages as well. As far as when we're doing the Facebook promotion, we don't just share it on our Facebook page. I'll post, but then I will go to other Facebook groups and pages that I'm part of or other entities that are on Facebook and be like, hey, can you either share my post or talk about this in some capacity? We have an annual newsletter, so depending on if we have enough that is available at the time, we'll advertise within that, and that goes out to about 10,000 people. And then, just tabling, we'll make sure that we're bringing up events when we're out in the public already for events, and just trying to come up with how many ways we can do it. Sometimes we'll set up a tabling event outside of a place where we think some of the people that we're trying to get to come to our event might be, and so on.
Nice. Yeah, nowadays there's so many ways to do it. And I love using my partners to share information for me. That's fantastic. Let's see. One final question came in for Taylor and Sensa. I think the engaging ease, you had a slide in there that wasn't it didn't show up for all of us sometime. Can you talk just a little bit about that? And you're muted, so.
Okay, I think I shared it one more time. I leave it
Oh, yeah,
on
there.
presenter mode, so maybe that's what messed it up.
Yeah.
But our E's are like engage, explore, explain, elaborate, evaluate, and this is kind of just the model that we use when we're creating our lesson plans and following this outline for every lesson that we do. So we start with an engaging thing and ask the kids like, what do you think about said topic before we even start, and engage like what they know already. And then we explore by watching videos or reading books. And then we get into our explain part, which is our real, like our full lesson. And then our elaborate, which is also some of our lessons of having make those connections, apply learning to real situations and something that kids can understand, especially when we get those 4-year-olds in our lesson. The elaborate is really about like making those connections to something that they already know outside of the classroom and then to what we're learning. And then sometimes we get to the evaluate. Sometimes the evaluate is just for us when we leave the lesson of like, okay, did that work? Did that activity, was it effective? And then sometimes it's for the kids of like, did you learn anything today? Like, what did you take away? And so, yeah, that's kind of the format that we use for all of our like library lessons specifically, and then a lot of our other lessons as well.
Awesome. Thank you for re-showing that. And I will, if Alina and Taylor and Sansa are okay with sharing their presentations with us, we'll put those on the website too. So then you guys who maybe want to go back and look at them, you'll have their contact info too. So if you guys can send those to me, that would be fantastic some way. So thank you so much. I think what a great conversation today on education. Thank you for sharing two very different perspectives, but fantastic information in there and ideas on how to not just keep things going, but start to think about them from the beginning all the way to the end. It was great information. So Alina, Taylor, Sensa, thank you very much for joining us. Everyone else in the audience, thank you for spending an hour with us today. We appreciate your time. Join us. Our next event or our next webinar will be February 26th, and we'll have another kind of growth mindset, how to engage your board in successful project planning, program planning, how do you grow your districts. So we're looking forward to that one. You'll see that information on the website shortly. And I hope everyone has a fantastic rest of your day and rest of January. Stay warm if you're someplace that's cold. So thank you for joining us, and we will see you next month.